Yo and hello, my friends. Welcome back to another episode of the League of Fantasy Legends podcast. I'm your host, Chris Benedict, aka Pistons Wish. We've got a sweet episode here today. We're welcoming our first ever guest to the podcast. Welcome. It's Fairest Biscuit. You can find him on Twitter. It's at Fairest Biscuit. How you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you very much for having me. Looking forward to it.
Sweet. Hey, what should we call you? Should I just call you Biscuit? Is that easiest?
Hey, whatever you want to call me. Fairest, I get all the time. I also get, just Biscuit, whatever is easier for everyone, especially when you're looking for me. Again, whatever you prefer.
All right, fair enough. I'll probably just go with Biscuit, to be honest. I think that's easiest
that
for
works.
me. Sweet. All right, so your Twitter handle, it's AFG Fairest Biscuit. What is AFG, if you don't mind, just for a second?
Yeah, real quick. So AFG actually stands for Amber Flight Gaming. It's the gaming organization that I represent. I'm actually the general manager for them, so I help with all the onboarding, with whether it be like staff or players on their end. So yeah, I've been doing that for a couple of years and really enjoy that.
Sweet, man. Hey, so I see in your profile picture on Twitter, you've got like a esports jersey on. Is that from that? Have you like participated in tournaments or something?
Yeah, so I haven't necessarily participated in any tournaments, but they do give out some pretty sweet swag, as you can clearly tell. It actually has my name across the back, and that's actually a hoodie. That's that's one of my favorite pieces of clothing that I have. I love it. It's so comfortable too.
Nice. Okay, so obviously Fantasy LCS podcast. How long have you been playing?
Yeah, so I've actually been watching League as far as like the esports goes for quite a few years now. My friends got me back into it back when Echo Fox was around, if anybody remembers that team.
I was a huge Froggen fan, personally.
Dude, Froggen is the man.
I'm an Anivia guy, so he was my first favorite player, I guess.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I came into it not really knowing any of the players, and yeah, obviously I do know Froggen. He was like, the heart of that team, in my opinion. But obviously they dissolved, and then I had to pick a new team, and I noticed, a bunch of the players went to Dig. So I'm unfortunately a Dignitas fan, whether for good or for bad. But that's where we're currently at with that. But bringing it back to fantasy in general, I've probably been following for the last couple of years. I think it's more of like a niche, I would say, definitely in the fantasy scene. But hopefully, we can shed more light on it per se, and get more people involved, hopefully.
Yeah, for sure. I remember wanting to play it back when it was actually hosted on the LOL Esports website.
Right.
Thank goodness for Sleeper. It really made everything way easier.
Definitely.
Okay, so you're trying to start a Dynasty League. I'm a part of it. We've got a pretty good group of people. Do you want to just talk about it for a second?
Yeah, absolutely. So just a little bit more about my background. I've been playing fantasy, whether that be, football, basketball, all kinds of different sports for a very long time, ever since I was little, because my family was really into it.
So I think I was a third grader helping my dad with fantasy football drafts, so I'm right there with you.
Definitely, from writing on the whiteboards or whatever, the names of players and whatnot, doing live drafts. As far as I know, my dad's actually been playing since before I was born, keeping scores just by hand. Too. Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. But yeah, no. So I mean, I have a lot of experience as far as fantasy sports go, and I really enjoyed watching just League and the esports scene. And I figure what better way to get more involved than to mesh the two together and see what we can do as far as like a dynasty league. So you did mention Sleeper, right? So they do typically like split to split leagues, and I do see that they have some dynasty settings now added onto their app. But I wanted to kind of take more of like a homegrown aspect, in that we're going to be looking to mesh both the LEC and the LCS together as far as like the player pool goes. And we're looking for about 8 to 10 players, again, for the first season that we're looking to put on. You did mention that there was quite a few people already interested. We are always looking for more people, because the more the merrier. We want to grow the scene for sure. So yeah, I mean, if you know anything about like the dynasty aspect of a fantasy league, it's you'll draft your roster, and then you'll be able to take players from that current roster that you have and carry them over into the following split/season. So we're really looking to just grow it from the ground up. If you're interested, feel free to get in touch with either myself or Piston.
Yeah, or me, yep.
Yeah, and we'll definitely get you involved and, get you all the information that you need. We have an official rule book that's ever changing, based on what the players and the participants are looking for to get out of it. And like I said, we're just really looking to get it up and running. Hopefully before the end of this split, just as like a trial run. But again, it's going to be ever changing, and we're always looking to make it better and improve upon it.
Yeah, I'm really excited for it. I think it'll bring kind of a different flavor than the split to split, kind of looking at like the youth and stuff. I've done a fantasy or a dynasty fantasy football league before. And so, yeah, it's fun. I think it'll be sweet.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, we're looking forward to getting started, preferably as soon as possible.
Yeah. How do you see the split of players? So obviously I am very familiar with the LCS doing this podcast. I don't really know much about the LEC outside of like G2, to be honest. How do you see the split? You think it's going to be all LCS players?
So if you take a look and if you're following the LCS, like obviously you are, you'll know that I would consider them outliers in EG. They're just completely dominating on historical levels right now. Right. But if you do take a look overall, we're looking at both leagues and just into one player pool. There are, like you mentioned, G2, like Caps is definitely at the top. He actually leads the league as far as like sleeper points go for any players. So I think there was like well-established players on the LEC that, if you're interested in something where both player pools are together, this would definitely be, a good jumping off point per se, because you'll get exposure to all those LEC players that you're not typically familiar with. So yeah, I mean, as far as like the scoring goes, again, it's all run through sleeper. You're probably better off taking players from the LCS, depending on which players those are, but there's definitely players in the LEC that definitely bring value, I would say, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Are you in an LEC fantasy league too?
So I am not currently.
Yeah, I'm not either.
Yeah, right. So not right now, but I do keep track of both LCS and LEC stats on my own.
Okay, nice.
Obviously, like I said, I use the Sleeper app for some scores, and then I keep track of a few other stats on my end. But just taking a look real quick here, I mean, like you mentioned, G2 Esports is arguably the most well-known team in LEC, but you also have other players from like Fnatic and this split, especially in Excel, that are definitely near the top when we're looking at.
Is that where Perks is now? Or no, he's on Vitality.
Yeah, Perks is on Vitality right now. So, yeah.
Yeah. Nice. Well, I think that'll be sweet. I can't wait to get that going. Hopefully here pretty soon. So if you guys are interested, honestly, just send us a thing. We'll get you right involved. We'll move right into like our next section. We were going to do a summer split recap, but I think we first need to react to the news that came out today for TSM. Big news. So it seems like Hooney's having wrist problems. He's out. Tactical and Mia have been demoted to Academy. We got new players. Oh gosh, I don't have it up here.
I believe Solo is going to be in the top, is what I saw correctly. And then obviously Spica is still going to be there in the jungle.
Yep, Spica and Maple. Yep.
Right. Yeah, Maple is going to be there. I'm not sure. I mean, I guess if I had to guess, it's probably because he was one of their bigger acquisitions.
Right.
Over the offseason, or even, he was their last split, but since they picked him up, right, he's been one of their bigger acquisitions. I'm surprised they wouldn't just take the risk, put their jungler in there, their mid from the academy, just to give him some time, give him some exposure into, the pros. But maybe they still have faith in Maple.
Yeah, only problem with that, the academy mid, I'm looking at it now, it's Takeover, and he was there in the end of the spring, and he was he was okay, but
right.
I don't think he was knocking everything down. The bot lane, it's Instinct and Chime. So Chime's moving over from Golden Guardians Academy. I don't know anything about Instinct. Do you know anything about him?
I'm not too familiar with Instinct. I'm sure he has, some experience, whether that be an academy or on a different team, but like I said, I'm not familiar enough to give any kind of opinion on him.
Right. So what's your take on what this means for TSM players going forward? Because personally, I've got Spica and Maple in like half of my leagues, so I'm kind of terrified. What's your take here? Yeah,
I mean, as far as for the players, I mean, Spica, I think, is the only solid, rock per se on that roster. I think he right now is the only one to consider rostering moving forward. If we're just looking at LCS players, there's definitely better players out there.
Right.
But he's definitely, just because of the state that TSM is in, I think he is definitely towards the bottom for sure. As far as Maple goes, I'm in that same boat. I picked him up very late in the LCS draft that I did, just almost as like a flyer to see what would happen, and just having any good returns per se.
Honestly, week 1 they were really good. Brutal since then though.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So we'll move into what we had prepared here. I'm going to start off just kind of a rapid fire. Who would you rather have for the rest of the season? You good with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get into it.
All right. First one, Hansama or FBI?
Okay. So I'll start things off here. I would say between these two, I'm definitely going FBI, just because I like the cohesiveness of the Hunter Thieves squad. They've been together for quite some time, and I feel like that's a really important aspect in League Fantasy. So I'm definitely going to go with FBI over Hansama. as far as the sleeper stats go, it looks like there's about a 1 point difference with FBI in the favor there.
Yep.
But just taking a look at some other statistics here, if we just go like raw numbers between like with no like multipliers or bonuses from the sleeper scoring, FBI actually has about a clear 3 points on Hans Sama per game here. So that's going to be my reasoning to go FBI. And like I said, I value that cohesiveness of the team overall. How about you?
Yeah, I agree. I'm an FBI fan. I kind of always have been. So if you guys have been listening like since the beginning, I've always ranked FBI number 1. He actually finished number 1 in the spring split per sleeper scoring. And I think that Team Liquid, like when they win, it's so clean. They don't have these scrappy games where the kill scores get real high. And so the points stay low for Liquid players really outside of Bjergsen. And so, yeah, I totally agree with FBI. Okay, second one here. Would you rather have Danny or literally anybody else?
So as far as this question goes, I'm actually going to make it really clear. I mean, I think it's Danny almost by a landslide, just because if you look at, again, the scoring, he is putting up historical numbers. He's the only player averaging over 40 in the LCS. He is by far the clear favorite as far as like the ADCs go. So I just don't see, I know EG lost earlier too. I believe it was CLG, but I think that's just like a one-off, and I just don't I mean, I'm not saying they won't lose again, but they have just been running through everybody in this league so far, so I'm definitely going to take Danny.
You know, I was kind of an EG hater coming into the split. They were 9-9 last split. I mean, they had to win a tiebreaker to even make the playoffs. And so I was not a believer. I was, especially on Jojo Piano, I had him as my avoid. That was a big miss. And so looking at the standings, like, the only players that are even close to him are Inspired and Jojo. And if EG is going to be good, it's going to go through Danny. So unless 100 Thieves figures it out and goes 8-1, I think that's really the only way that Danny gets threatened. Yeah, I think it's Danny.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Okay, so keeping on the 80 carries, do you rather have Berserker, Luger, or Johnson?
Okay. Yeah, so like I mentioned before, I am, I should say, a Dig fan. And, you know, unfortunately, they, for some reason, let Johnson go earlier in his career. So, but I'm actually going to say Berserker in this case, because I am not sold on Luger yet. I know he's having a really good split. I see him ranked 3rd currently among ADCs. But I'm just not sure what is to come of that CLG team. I know Johnson he's definitely a proven commodity for sure, and he's currently 2nd as far as the ADCs go. But I'm going to go ahead and say Berserker, go on a little bit of a limb here with Cloud9, just because I feel like Cloud9 is definitely starting to get their footing. Yeah, they played a very sloppy game and, you know, beat Dig, who, you know, choked away another win. But I do think that they're starting to find their footing, and they are playing both TSM and Immortals for this upcoming week. So I would be actually shocked if you don't see a Cloud9 player, all the entire roster in the top 5 in scoring this coming week. So I think Berserker stock is only going to rise from there. So I'm definitely going to go Berserker for the rest of the season.
Now, would it change your mind if I told you that, and this is a little unfair because obviously the first week it was not Berserker, but so the C9 80 carry position, currently 9th, literally only better than Immortals, lost. Doesn't change your mind?
It's not going to, just because I feel like outside of, again, like you just mentioned, having a different set of bottom players there for the first week. I mean, they still have Jensen, who, he's had a long run in the LCS, but he's still finding his footing, you know, coming back into competitively at the highest level, you know, obviously in the league. And Fudge with the role swap, he's still, you know, getting back into his old form of being on top. I just think like right now they're just trying to find their way. I mean, that is, if you think about it, that's 3 significant pieces of the puzzle that they're trying to all figure out how they fit and get back on the same page. So it's only been 3 weeks. I know the split's not that long, but they have quite a few games left, and I do foresee them finding their footing and, you know, being a lot better as the season rolls on.
Yeah, and C9's got such a pedigree, each of their players, that you got to think they're going to turn it around. And Berserker himself, like if you listen to, you know, what the pros are saying or what the analysts, I mean, people rate him as number 1 or number 2 right now. Right. Just on pure talent. So, yeah, I don't think you're wrong, but I am going to disagree with you here, and it's probably because I'm a homer. But I like Johnson. I think they've been really good. Johnson and Aframu kind of took it to Berserker and Sven last week. Kind of changed my mind on them. I've always liked Flyquest, but I did not believe in them coming into the split. But they've been good, and even like games that they haven't won, they've played really well. I think back to that Team Liquid game where they had the twitch and they kind of threw it at the end, but really had control of it the whole time. And when they win, it all goes through Johnson. I know last split it was more Takui, but this split is all through Johnson. He's second right now, despite having one less win than 100 Thieves and Team Liquid. He's still outscoring FBI and Hansama, so I'm going to go with Johnson over Berserker.
That's fair. I think that makes sense.
All right, moving on. Mid lane, would you rather have Jensen or Takui? So kind of a similar question, C9 versus Flyquest.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, in this situation, just from the reasoning I gave in regards to the AD carry question, I'm going to go Jensen just because I feel like he does have that experience, and I do feel like they're on the up and up. I know Takui is having a really solid split, but again, just for time's sake here, I'm going to go Jensen. I think he is going to pull it together and have a better rest of the season.
Yeah, and I like Takui for the same reasons we said, so that'll be kind of fun, kind of the little bit of a face-off there.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, jungler, and so this is a little different with our new information, but Spica or River rest of season? Oh, I just learned you're a Dig fan. I know what you're going to say.
Well, I mean, even before everything went down today, I was still taking a look at that TSM roster, just thinking, I don't know where they go from here, but definitely after the news today, and again, as you mentioned, just being kind of a homer, River going to take it for me in this situation. I mean, he's definitely worth considering rostering, especially if, you're currently looking at either the Immortals jungler or Spica right now, or no, it can be, or Spica. I would definitely roster River over both Spica and Kenby at this point, so I'm going to go River.
Yeah, I put this in here because it's actually literally a question I'm dealing with. I have Spica, River's available. I was prepared to say Spica, mostly because personally he's an MVP talent. Like he's
True.
Literally a former MVP. But I think you could argue both of these guys are an elo hell. Like I think most people would say that River's really good, Spica's really good, and the team around him maybe not quite as much. I was really prepared to go Spica, but with today's news, I think I'm going to take a last second turn and go River. I think TSM's pretty much mailing it in and looking to the future.
For sure, it definitely seems that way.
That's what it feels like. All right, last one. We're going to the top lane. Dokla from CLG or Fudge?
I'm gonna go Fudge. Again, I don't think Dokla for me as part of that CLG roster is really proven. I know they have that big win over EG, but I need more than that, right? They've been struggling, in splits prior, so I think this is proven for them for the rest of the split. But again, Fudge is a proven commodity, and I just see that C9 team on the way up in all positions, so I'm going to go Fudge in this case.
And I'm going Dokla, and here's why. I think both of these teams are pretty close in terms of what their records will be. I think both will end up probably looking at C9 probably 4th, CLG 5th or 6th. But when looking at kind of how the teams play, Dokla seems to be getting a little bit more focus, a little bit more resources through the game than Fudge is. And I think from a getting wins perspective, that's really good for Fudge. He's willing to play what the team needs, but I think that ends up with him being weak side a lot, whereas I think Dokla's going to be a little bit more of a strong side player, meaning that when CLG wins, I think Dokla will do better than Fudge will do when C9 wins. And so I think that might be, even if CLG wins 1 or 2 games less than C9 rest of the way, I'm hoping that that'll be enough to make up for it. So I'm going to go Dokla.
Okay, that's fair.
We'll move on to some other different questions. What was your biggest preseason miss? Like your biggest prediction you made preseason that has gone wrong?
So I honestly thought that both from a team perspective, like TSM and Dig would be better than they are currently. Just given the name brand behind TSM and all the resources they have, you definitely don't predict them making a massive roster change, really any time, let alone during the split like they have here. So I thought they, again, would be a lot better. And I know, being a Dig fan, I thought they were on the up and up, bringing in Blue and River, and, Bifrost continuing to be good in the support role there. I thought they would improve, but they just really haven't been able to find their footing. And I think right now you can say, as far as like a miss goes, I did think that Cloud9 would have been better off at this point, but I'm just happy that they're moving in the right direction. So I think I should say the whole roster of Cloud9 as far as like the fantasy aspect, each player in their given role. So I would say those were my misses so far.
Yeah, C9 as a team, they're 3-4, but fantasy wise they've been really bad. And it is interesting, the different feelings between Dignitas and TSM. They're both 2-5, but with Dignitas kind of running over TSM in that last game that we saw before the long break, really different feelings. Seems like Dignitas kind of going up, TSM kind of moving down. I think for me, I did have TSM 5th, so obviously that was a big miss, but I don't think it was my biggest miss. I already mentioned this. I had Jojo Piano as a player to avoid just because of his, last split, his fantasy output was fine. I think he finished 5th, but really he was just fractions of points above 8th. And so he was not spectacular. And then even during MSI, he wasn't racking up kills. He was playing well, but like fantasy-wise, not so much. Yeah, that was wrong. That was really, really wrong. So who do you think, for you, who's been the biggest surprise so far fantasy-wise?
Yeah, I would say surprises. I definitely think that Johnson is a surprise just because, we weren't really sure how the team would play overall, but just seeing them get everything together, both him being number 2 in the 80 carry role, I think is a surprise. I'm not sure how many people may have had that over, guys like FBI and Hansama. But in addition to that, I mean, even like a guy like Afromu, I mean, he's currently sitting at number 2 in the support. I know he obviously has some experience with Johnson when they were on Dig, but I mean, with the output that Johnson's putting out, it's only helping Afromu's stock. So I think those players in combination are definitely some of the bigger surprises for me for this split so far.
I think those are good. For Flyquest, Johnson, Afromu, I totally agree. I've got that written down here. I'm looking at my preseason rankings, and if you looked at them beforehand, I'm so sorry, because I'm looking at my jungler last pick was Contracts. You look at his rankings right now, he's second, 26.5. So that's awesome from him. Way wrong. My last ranked mid laner, Palafox. Yeah, no, he's sitting 4th at 26 a game. My last ranked bot laner, guess who it was? It was Johnson. So I think all the surprises, I think those are the surprises, and even goes back one question to where did I miss? Those 3 for sure.
Definitely.
Who do you think's been the biggest disappointment?
So disappointments as far as like players go, I mean, I already mentioned, to this point, right, the C9 roster in general has just really not been living up to expectations, especially Jensen. I have him, currently at 9th overall as far as like mids go. And it's just really strange. I thought they'd be better off. But I think another player outside of the C9 roster to take a look at is Kenvi. I know he had a lot of hype coming out of, that 100 Thieves team. And he is just, along with the rest of the Immortal squad, putting up historically low numbers.
Correct.
And I mean, I don't know what their plan is. I'm surprised they haven't made a blow-up move like TSM has, where they just start bringing in the academy because, at this point, what do you have to lose? I think they're in bigger disarray than even TSM is. But yeah, I mean, he is really the only sustainable piece I see there for at least maybe next split. I'm not sure how long of a leash he has, but hopefully he can turn things around.
So Kenvi averaging 8.1 points per game, and that includes 3 negative weeks. I've never seen a player have 3 negative weeks.
It's rare.
That's, I'm not sure how much he was rostered, especially in 8-team leagues. But if you ended up with him, I mean, that was rough. And they even gave you a little bit of hope week 1. They won that game. Gosh, who was it against? I don't remember who they beat week 1, but they had some decent scores. I know that baited me into playing them a second week, and no, that was not good.
Yeah, they actually took the win against, looks like Flyquest in that week.
Oh, Flyquest. That's right. Flyquest had a big lead and threw it away.
Right.
Man, they've done that a couple times. Yeah, for me, so a player I had circled was Hooney. I really thought Hooney was going to have a nice split, and I thought TSM was too. We've kind of talked about most of TSM, but Hooney specifically is actually sitting 9th, so he's been the second worst. Obviously, Immortals is worst across the board, but Hooney was a player I thought was going to have a nice split. Seems like people ban his Rumble, and that's just kind of game over for him, so really a bummer for Hooney for sure. Obviously, the C9 players are all circled here, even if we don't expect it to continue.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Hooney and the Echofox/Dignitas fan base don't necessarily see eye to eye, if you know any of the history.
Oh, yeah. Okay, last question here, and it's kind of a layup. Who's the fantasy MVP through 7 games?
I mean, I guess at this point you could pick your favorite EG player, but I'm going to go with Danny just because of the numbers that he's currently putting up. I know you could, argue that Inspired or even Jojo is definitely in the running for sure. But again, just because of the numbers that Danny is putting up, I'm going to go with Danny. An interesting note as far as like Inspired goes, he actually has a higher points per game differential between him and the second best player than Danny does. So I thought that was an interesting point. But at the end of the day, I'm going to go Danny just because of the output he's putting out on a game-to-game basis.
You stole my point. That's exactly what I was going to say. I was going to be contrarian. I was going to say Inspired was for two reasons. One of which is that gap is actually bigger. So the gap between Inspired and Contracts is bigger than the gap between Danny and Johnson. The second reason being that I think Danny probably went 3 or 4 in every draft. Inspired may have dropped to the second round, so a little bit better value from Inspired than Danny. But I mean, both of them have been so good that they're probably carrying your teams right now.
For sure.
All right, so I want to go through your look at power rankings. I gave mine out last week. Just kind of compare and see where you have teams. Do you mind running through those?
Yeah, definitely. So at the very bottom, I don't think it's any kind of surprise. I have Immortals. I actually have a note here that they're just in a tier of their own as far as how bad they are. They're just historically bad. I don't roster any players from Immortals if you can help it.
Correct.
And then I would say just a step above them would be TSM. I wrote this up before the news, just before we started recording. So, I mean, just it's TSM, right? Like, people know who that is. If you think, League Esports, you definitely know TSM. And just looking at that state of both that roster and that team right now, I just can't believe they're sitting at where they're at. And then from there, I have Dig. I just think they're overall just a below average team. Hopefully they can get some wins here, maybe make some kind of statement in the playoffs. But ultimately, I don't see them doing much more the rest of the split, so I have them in 8th. 7th, I have Golden Guardians. Kind of feel like they're at their own tier as well. They're not necessarily like the very worst of the teams in the league, but they're also not really contenders per se, I would say. They do have a notable player, or I should say they have no notable players, in the top 5 in any position. And actually, a Blaze Olive is sitting currently in 8th spot in the mid lane there. So if you have to roster them, you definitely want to obviously roster any of those players over the bottom 3 team players that I had already mentioned, but they're just there. They're just kind of existing, in my opinion. So from there, I currently have Cloud9. I know I'm probably going to get a lot of crap for that just because of how much I talked up Cloud9 through all the other questions we went through. But again, as of right now, I still think they're getting their footing and they're on their way up. I do expect them to move up in these power rankings as the split continues.
That's really interesting that you have Cloud9 lower than I do after you went with Cloud9 and all the questions and I did.
I know. I mean,
that's kind of crazy.
If we're looking at it from like a right now, like I'm not saying they would finish in 6 by any means, but I just don't think that's the case. But literally right now, right? I mean, I have them at 6. So from there, I have Flyquest at 5, just because they do have, the bad loss to, Immortals. And I do believe they do also have the win over Cloud9. Again, it was a Cloud9 still getting their footing, but they do have that win nonetheless. So I have them at 5th currently. So in 4th place, I have CLG. I still think, as I mentioned previously, that they are in more of a prove it to me stage. They had the big win over EG, but the other wins are all wins that they should have had, right? Teams against Golden Guardians, Dig, and TSM. So they still have a lot to prove, in my opinion, moving forward. And then from there, I just think you have, the next echelons as far as like the tiers go. Number 3, I have TL. They did lose to Hunter Thieves, and they did lose to TSM. But, at the end of the day, that roster is still very solid in what they put together. And I still think it's better than the majority of teams in the league. And then number 2, I have Hunter Thieves. They beat TL, which obviously gives them the upper hand as far as that debate goes. But they do have losses against Cloud9, right? So that's another reason I'm kind of higher on Cloud9 because they've already shown that they can beat these better teams.
In a smash, like an obliteration loss, that would was not close.
Right, exactly. And then I think number 1 really isn't close. Evil Genius is putting up historical numbers as far as fantasy goes. I just think they're by far and away the best team in the league as of right now.
Yes, our only difference is we swapped C9 and CLG. That's interesting.
I think you can make the argument as of right now, but I mean, again, from what I understand of Cloud9, understand those players and how much the cohesion aspect of the team matters in league. I think they're on the up and up.
Yeah, and I talked down C9 for a lot of it, but when I do these power rankings, I kind of think so if C9 played CLG today, who would I choose to win? And I think I would still choose C9 despite what the results were recently.
Right.
And it just seems like with their bottom lane, they're really 3-1 because they started 0-3 when they had Destiny and King playing in the bot lane. So really 3-1, and that game was such a disaster from Sven's Lulu. Like, kind of feels like he lost the game on his own. Still kind of learning, it seems like.
Yeah, I know we'll get into it in a little bit here, but if you take a look at their upcoming schedule for this week, they'll easily, in my opinion, be 5-1 after the fact. From getting their entire roster, I should say,
right,
into the lineup.
Right. Yeah, we'll move right into it. So next up, we've got match by match previews. So we'll just kind of go each one. I've got the betting odds here as well to kind of give us some direction. So first game of the day on Saturday, it's 100 Thieves versus Flyquest. 100 Thieves is minus 230 favorites. So who do you got here?
Yeah, I have 100 Thieves just because I think they are just overall the better team. Just from a fantasy aspect, I think that it should be very interesting to see what Johnson and Aframu are able to do against this 100 Thieves team. Because if you take a look at the stats, 100 Thieves is actually second overall as a team in points allowed to the ADC.
Okay.
So I'm actually interested to see that matchup and just to see if Johnson's able to prove himself, amongst the league's best. So we'll see how that goes.
Did you say 100 Thieves is second most allowed points to ADCs?
No, second points, fewest points, I should say, allowed.
Oh, okay. That makes more sense. I was like, wait, that is a crazy stat.
Excuse me, I might have misspoken, but no.
You're good.
Okay.
I want Flyquest. I so badly want to pick Flyquest here. I think I'm going to do it. Even though I'm not sure, I'm going to have to convince myself as I do it, but they were so impressive to me last week, and I think they're going to keep the ball rolling. 100 Thieves obviously was also impressive last week. Both of them went 2-0. I'm going to go with Flyquest.
Fair. That's fair. I think it could happen.
Yeah, next one's Dignitas versus EG. EG minus 450 favorites, so gigantic favorites. Are you going Homer here?
Put all the money on Dig. All the money in the world.
All right, I'll love it.
I mean, let's be honest. I don't know what's going to happen. I would not pick Dig. I was just completely kidding. I actually have a note here. First bullet is pray, and then we just continue on to the notes that we have under that. But you play the guys who you have to on Dig, and you just basically play the entire EG roster from a fantasy standpoint. We'll see how things turn out here, but I would expect Evil Geniuses to have a big day. An interesting note on this one, actually, if you take a look at this, the team rankings as far as points allowed, Dig is actually fourth in the league in fewest points allowed as a whole. So maybe if you pray hard enough, anything can happen. So we'll see what happens.
Right. Yeah, the week's kind of full of potential blowouts, looks like. Next one is TSM versus C9. C9 minus 325. Any upset here? No chance, right?
I would absolutely not take TSM, especially after the roster news. I think this is looking to Cloud9 to have a massive day on day one. And I think they'll continue that into day two as well. So definitely want to play as many C9 players as you can for this weekend, especially in this game.
Yep, I 100% agree. Looking at game 4, it's Immortals versus CLG. CLG minus 220, which is criminally low. Immortals has no chance, right?
I definitely don't think so. I think, if anything, if you're an Immortals fan, you might consider this like a trap game because CLG does have 100 Thieves on day 2. So we'll see. I would assume this is a warm-up for CLG, right, as they get ready for day 2. But you never know. Things might happen here, and Immortals might be able to pull it out, but it's highly unlikely.
In the spring split, I started out as an Immortals hater, and they won a couple games, and I was like, wait, I was wrong. They're good. And right when I said that, they were horrible. And then right when I really bought that they were horrible, they won a couple games again. It's just a team I've never gotten right. But they've just been so bad. There's no way they beat CLG.
I don't foresee it.
I refuse to believe it.
I think if CLG loses this game, I think all stock that they've built up to this point is just gone. I wouldn't.
Yeah, I think you're right. Sound the sirens.
You're right.
And then last game, actually the biggest spread of the day, it's Team Liquid minus 525 versus Golden Guardians. What do you think?
I'm going to go with Liquid here just because I do like their roster overall the best. You have a Blaze Olive going against Bjergsen. I would expect a big day from Bjergsen. I think he's going to eat up a Blaze Olive. And then as far as any other kind of fantasy, you might want to consider playing Santorin as well, as Golden Guardians does actually give up the most points to junglers on a per game basis.
Okay.
So definitely consider Santorin if you're rostering him currently.
Yeah, and I think if you're a betting guy, and I don't think it's even legal to bet on League of Legends in the United States, but I think this is probably the second most likely upset. I see Golden Guardians with a lot better chance to beat Liquid than Immortals, TSM, or Dignitas. Even though the betting odds don't reflect that, but I don't actually think they'll win. I totally agree with Liquid here. I think there are more interesting games on Sunday. First one Sunday, it's Flyquest minus 155 versus TSM. I know where I'm going. I think everyone knows where I'm going. You too?
I think so. I think we're in agreement. You're going to go with Flyquest, I believe. Is that correct?
I'm a fan.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good pick. Just again, from a fantasy aspect, TSM actually gives up the second most amount of points to support. So you might want to consider playing Afromove for sure, especially with the duo of Johnson going on and their roster issues as far as on the TSM side. I think Afromove is a good play here from a fantasy aspect.
Yeah, it'll be Johnson and Afromove versus the Academy bot lane. Well, not anymore, but the old Academy bot lane from TSM.
Right.
And I was looking at the Academy standings. They're 9th. So TSM Academy was 9th in the Academy standings, and now they're moving up to LCS, so it could be a bloodbath.
That always seems like a good idea.
Yeah, especially after what they did to Berserker and Sven.
Definitely.
Oh, second game here, CLG versus 100 Thieves. 100 Thieves actually minus 275, so pretty heavy favorites, more than I would have thought. I want to pick CLG, I'm not going to. Kind of a sneaky tough schedule for 100 Thieves with Flyquest and CLG this week. I think 100 Thieves takes this one. What do you think?
I think so as well. I think this is a big game for both of these teams. Again, just what I mentioned previously on the CLG side of things, it's another prove me wrong type of game for them. And then for 100 Thieves, I think it's just solidify their status type of game. I think they have a really good chance of going 2-0 this weekend. So this is definitely one I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, I think if they win this one, it'll kind of solidify that tier line with 100 Thieves above it, CLG below.
Definitely.
So that's what they'll be looking to do for sure.
Definitely.
Game 3 is the game of the week. It's Evil Geniuses versus Team Liquid. Evil Geniuses very, very slight favorites, minus 120. I'll let you go first. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely has a lot of fantasy implications. I definitely agree that it is the game of the week. Both these teams are amongst the top, actually 1 and 2 as far as points given up overall to any position. I should say they're the best defenses per se. So you definitely want to play all your players on both these teams because it should be a really good one. And I think one of the big things to look forward to, if you're not into fantasy, is definitely what Jojo is going to do against Bjergsen. Definitely the young gun going against, the much older and solidified vet. So should be a really good game. Looking forward to this one.
Yeah, for sure, especially that mid lane matchup. Like you said, I'm sure Jojo's going to come out with some spicy trash talk right before. Something about Bjergsen being grandpa or something. I don't even know.
He's going to put him in the retirement home or something.
Yeah, something like that. I hope he does at least. Did you make a pick? I missed it.
I'm sorry. I'm actually going to go with EG just because, again, I do think they are the better team. But, I mean, if they lose, I just think I think that's still understandable from a TL perspective. It would be a massive win for TL, no doubt. But I'm going to go EG is the winner in this one.
Yeah, I'm actually going with Team Liquid. I think that Team Liquid's going to have this one circled. And just the way they play, I know EG is way more aggressive. That's why their scores are so much higher. But I think Team Liquid has the cohesion and the talent to kind of dissuade some of that and kind of take the aggression and then take advantage of it on the other side of the map. And so I actually think Team Liquid's going to do good stuff here. I'm picking Team Liquid.
I think that's fair.
Fourth game, C9 versus Immortals. C9 minus 525, so biggest favorite of the whole week. Any chance for an upset? I don't think so.
I don't think so. I think the only question I have from the Immortals standpoint is when are we going to see the Academy players? So I think that's the biggest hope for Immortals fans at this point. We'll see what happens. I think this is another demolishing of another team for a C9 here. Again, play all your C9 players this weekend. Lock it in.
C9 has the easiest schedule imaginable. It's Immortals who hasn't barely gotten kills in 2 weeks, and TSM with their Academy roster. I mean, you couldn't ask for a better C9 week. Last game's Golden Guardians versus Dignitas. Golden Guardians minus 145. What do you think here?
I think this is a really interesting matchup. It's going to be interesting from a fantasy perspective to see if Licorice will be able to carry his team against a weaker top lane in Gamsu. He actually leads his team in points per game fantasy aspect, so it is interesting to see a top, because it's not typically the top as a leading scorer for a team. So we'll see how that goes. Again, from a fantasy standpoint, Dig, I'm just hoping, not only as a homer, but I'm really hoping to see that River and Blue can work more cohesively and pull out a win here. I'm going to go with the upset. I think this might be my only upset. I'm going to go with Dig over Golden Guardians to end the week.
Yeah, I don't mind that. I think it'll be a close one. Golden Guardians is a team, I think it's really hard to read. Like, I think they have played well at times. They've gotten early leads at times, and then other times they kind of just look horrible. It might just be the stench from their first game of the year where they got murdered. But I do think they're good. I think they're kind of the Mendoza line of if you're better than Golden Guardians, then you're a good team. And if you're worse than Golden Guardians, you're a bad team. I think that's kind of the average.
Right, I think that's very fair.
So I am going to go Golden Guardians here. Fantasy-wise, I think of both Blue and Ablaze Olive as Azir players, so I think it'll be interesting to see who gets the Azir. And I know we haven't talked about this, and it's kind of random, but I hope they nerf Corki soon. I hate watching that.
He's everywhere.
I was just thinking of Blue in their last game, and I just hate Corki. All right, so we're nearing the end here, but I want to get a couple questions from you before you go. First of all, who wins the split?
I think right now it is Evil Geniuses to lose. There's definitely still a lot of matches to be played, but if they just keep up the streak, again, it is a long split. I don't really see them losing, so I'm gonna go with Evil Geniuses as of right now.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely the pick. Who do you think's going to Worlds? 3 teams.
So I think obviously if EG wins, they qualify. So EG, I'm gonna go with Liquid because I do think just that experience that Bjerg has, I think that is definitely worth something. I feel like that goes to the rest of the roster. So I'm going to go with Bjerg and then in Team Liquid. And then for the third team, I think I'm going to pick an upset here. I'm not going to go with 100 Thieves, although I wouldn't be surprised. But I'm actually going to go all the way back and take Cloud9. I think they're going to end up knocking one of those top teams off in the playoffs when it matters most. So I'm going to go with, again, Cloud9, Liquid, and Evil Geniuses to round out the teams going to Worlds.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think the consensus is that there are 3 spots for 4 teams. So I can't wait to see how that will turn out. It's going to be heartbreak for one of them.
Right.
Okay, last one. Does North America make it out of groups at Worlds this year?
I mean, I got to think it's one of the better years, right? That there's an actual chance. I mean, I'm going to go yes. If any of the 3 teams make it out, I think that will definitely happen. How far they will go, I don't know. It's only a matter of time before the LCK teams step in. So I'm going to go yes, that they're going to make it out of groups.
You have to go yes. You have to have hope.
Definitely.
It's going to happen, and it won't just because of Sneaky, I swear.
Right.
Okay, last question. You going to Worlds? Worlds in North America this year. So I think the group stage is in New York. I think the finals are in San Francisco. I don't know where you're from. Summer finals are in Chicago. You're going to make it to any of these things?
If anything, New York would be the most likely for me. I'm actually in Pennsylvania, so that would be the closest. Unfortunately, my schedule is a little tight as far as my time goes, so I don't think I'm going to make it, but I'll definitely be watching, on Twitch. I'm
just happy that it won't be in the middle of the night this year. I definitely have had times where I'm kind of have it on my drive to work because it's at 7 a.m.
That's always a bonus.
I will be at summer finals. So obviously I'm in Michigan. Finals are in Chicago, just a short little train ride. So I will be there, and then Worlds, I sure hope so. But New York's pretty far. All right, man. Well, I really appreciate you joining. Any other words before we sign off here?
No, I mean, again, if anybody is interested in the Dynasty Fantasy League that we're looking to start up, by all means, please feel free to reach out to me on Twitter. I am at Fairest Biscuit, and it's FAIRSTBISCUT. Again, any information that you could want, or if you have any questions, I'm always open to discussion and answering whatever that you may have.
Well, I really appreciate you joining, being the first guest on our podcast. I think our conversation was interesting. I hope that you guys listening really enjoyed it. Follow us on Twitter too. It's at LFLpod. You'll find all my thoughts. You'll find the link to our weekly challenge that we do. You just answer 15 questions. I've got a $25 gift card on the line for the cumulative winner. Have you been playing that?
I actually have not to this point, but it is something that is on my radar. I got to just get the time and fill that one of those out. It's an awesome gift. Thank you very much for giving back to the community.
Oh, it's fun. I'm trying to get people involved, trying to get people. I think the one drawback from Fantasy LCS, just the way it's formatted, is it doesn't require a ton of active maintenance. You kind of draft and that's mostly it.
Right.
Just because you're not making a lot of roster decisions and stuff. So I was hoping to get something that will get people involved kind of week to week.
Yeah, I think it's definitely worth anybody who watches League. I mean, it's free money per se, right? I mean, you get the awesome gift if you can get enough right, and you get to talk to like-minded people.
That's right. So thanks again, everyone, for watching. Really appreciate it. If you want to support the show, best way to do it is simply to share it with your friends. Follow us on Twitter. Follow us on your favorite podcast app. Thank you again so much for tuning in. This is Pistons Wish and Fairest Biscuit signing off. Peace out.